One of my absolute favourite strategy games has received a hefty expansion. Behind the Throne is adding more of what makes Old World such a gem. Intrigue, events, historical characters fighting against your rule, betrayal and treason, and dire consequences that make a peachy reign spiral. I see a lot of threads and discussions about features people want to see in Civilization. Better warfare, meaningful diplomacy, AI that actually plays the game. These are all hallmarks of Old World, and I feel like it would tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people. So that's what I want to talk about today. Yes, I'll touch on the new expansion and what that's bringing to the table, but I mainly want to step back and look at the game as a whole. Halfway between a love letter and an attempt to convince you to plunge into this fantastic title. There's never been a better time to play Old World, and today I'm going to show you why. Those of you only interested in expansion content, don't fret. I've got a section on that later in the video. If you skip ahead, I won't take it personally. Though, if you want to stick around, I would be keen to hear if you agree with the points I'm gonna make. Get your voices heard in the comments section. So for those of you that have yet to play it, let's look at Old World 101, the basics. What, when, where, why, and how. It's a historical 4X that zeroes in on one period of history, the Ancient Era. The Bronze Age, its collapse and subsequent Iron Age, Classical Antiquity, this covers it all. You'll take charge of one of the big movers and shakers from this period, be that the Greeks, Egyptians, Carthaginians, Babylonians, Romans, etc. Starting as an iconic leader of your people, you'll discover, expand, trade, build, schmooze, conquer, and subject until the whole world is under your sway. So you can look at it as a condensed, hyper-focused civilization. And if you're fond of this era of history, then that might be enough to sell you on it. And while that isn't the wrong way to describe it, it doesn't do it justice, because there's so much more to it. You're not some eternal omnipotent ruler. You're very human and very flawed. You'll make friends and enemies, get married and secure your dynasty, but anger the wrong people and your reign could end very quickly and very violently. It sounds a bit like I'm describing Crusader Kings, and that's not a bad way to look at it. The turn-based 4X gameplay of Civ combined with the character-driven focus and emergent storytelling of Crusader Kings. And it just makes sense. Civilizations rise and fall based on their leaders. A great commander might conquer most of the known world, only to see his progress fumbled and undone as his useless idiot son inherits the throne. History is filled with children who could never live up to their parents after all. At its core, it is a 4X game. It feels familiar in that regard, but all these other angles help dislodge it from the dug-in formula. It doesn't feel board gamey like so many others in the genre. This straddles the line between 4X and grand strategy, resulting in something unpredictable and volatile. But in that mix is something else, a war game. See, combat is a huge part of this. Obviously, you'll wail on other nations, and the world itself is a hostile place. Barbarians have set up shop in ruins around the world, and the smarter ones have banded together to form tribes. If you want to secure your place in the world, you will have to deal with those threats. And yes, you can take the peaceful route, forge trade deals with other nations to boost your relations, marry a tribal leader to ensure peace, turn off barbarians in the game setup. But let's be honest, we all like a little scrap here and there. And when that time comes, Old World just does it better. Every unit is important. Fighting a campaign isn't a matter of churning out troops and flooding the land. Your army has to complement itself and specialize. Also, the AI is way more competent, but I'll get onto that a bit later. Units can be upgraded to fill specific roles, be that spearmen holding the line or archers targeting enemy weak points. Terrain is also incredibly important. Much like history, holding a choke point can negate a massive numbers disadvantage. Soldiers take time to reach their full potential, and battle-hardened troops with several barbarian campaigns under their belt will be a darn sight more useful than someone fresh out the barracks. But then again, soldiers alone don't win wars, generals do. And the characters you attach to lead each regiment can make all the difference. This is where Old World really deviates from the genre and becomes one of a kind. The whole world is a stage, and you are just one of its players. The generals defending your land all have opinions of you, and if those opinions are negative, well, they probably won't be too willing to put their neck on the line for you. In each game, you choose a few different noble houses to entrust your cities to. This is kind of like adjusting your nation on the fly every game. They each have bonuses and produce certain types of characters. They might flourish under your leadership or feel downtrodden, in which case they will go against the grain. And now, with the new expansion, prominent characters, or rising stars as they're known, can advance through the ranks and hold sway over your country. You can either work them into your grand plan, or try and silence their voice. Yeah, I'm sure that will go fine for everyone involved. There's so much going on, different families and characters to appease, campaigns to run, infrastructure to build, so many moving parts that might draw your focus away from some smaller important details, say educating your heir. Now this is something really smart the game does. It puts you in the position of a ruler. You might be so caught up with your war council that you forget to pay attention to your child's education. And that negligence will come to pass when they inherit the throne. It's pretty accurate to history, I must say. Events will pop up requiring your attention. Some may have immediate resolution, others may spin into greater stories, resolving over several years, and the subjects can vary greatly. It could be an event about a duel on the battlefield, a new religious cult that's gained sway, or the orgy your ruler had a bit too much fun at. It's a strategy game first and foremost, but the role-playing angle gives each match a fresh feeling. It might even lead you to make choices that are quite clearly bad, just because it feels like what your character would do. The stories that arise, they're not just yours, and they don't just concern your nation. The whole world is filled with ambitious folks, and you'll either have to clash heads with them, or coerce them with a bit of diplomatic charm. And again, diplomacy is another area where Old World just does it better. It feels more interesting. It's not just some arbitrary screen with the same arbitrary choices with nations predisposed to act in an arbitrary way. Relationships are built over generations and in a multitude of ways. Whether you're sending diplomats or traders, or happening upon an event that involves another power, there are plenty of ways to build or break relationships in the game. It's multi-layered. You might be met with a choice that'll strengthen ties with the neighbor, but your people will suffer at this decision. There's cause and consequence, rather than a one-size-fits-all set of commands. If you can nurture a peace and forge an alliance, it also means something. From my experience, it takes a lot of bad will to break apart two nations. They aren't just gonna turn around and stab you in the back like a certain Sumerian leader in Civilization 6. I joke, but there's some weight behind it. The AI in Old World doesn't make knee-jerk decisions like a bunch of comic book villains. They also do something that I think a lot of people will like, or rather, they don't do something. Cheat. On higher difficulties, they'll start more established with extra cities, but from there, they've got the same tools as you. And from what I've seen, there's no rule bending, no free resources, no soldiers conjured out of thin air. If anyone can counter that point in the comments, please do. But from my experience, I've never seen the AI straight up cheat. I've never been in a situation where the tables have turned because a city just magically conjured a horde of enemies to stop me. Not only does the AI play the game by the same rules, it also plays it well. It engages in combat with competence. It will try to avoid terrain traps you lay out, or coax you out when you're dug in deep. It'll focus down individual units in your army, break your formations, and encroach upon your weaker backlines. It does what a human would do, and honestly, that makes a world of difference. You come out of a war feeling like you've earned the win. You won on your own merit, not because the AI was just doing stupid AI things. Fundamentally, what Old World does is alter the formula with a few key changes, and the result feels different and rewarding. And some of those alterations are genuinely excellent. The orders system, for one, is fantastic. You only have a limited number of things you can do each turn. Now, this can be improved by various means, and certain leaders will have more orders, but this is like an abstract way of referencing the reach and efficiency of the state. Organizing a mass campaign halfway across the world is a lot of work. Maintaining that, and keeping families in order, and organizing civilian units, and educating your children, well, something's just not gonna get done. It introduces a sense of decision-making and prioritization that is lost when games let you do all the things all the time. Now, I know it sounds cumbersome and annoying, but it's not. Really, it is a great feature. It hyper-focuses on one period of history, and that too works in its favor. You aren't zipping through eras before you can take them in. You're dwelling on a captivating time period. Your spearmen aren't suddenly going to get outclassed and outgunned. Units remain relevant. A strong mountain choke point isn't just going to get circumvented. It's always going to be important, and it will even change your game plan, knowing that you can defend your lands much easier from this point rather than expanding endlessly. As for the DLC, well, it just adds more of what makes Old World compelling. The things I've talked about so far. It introduces over 350 new events tied to court politics, intrigue, and ambition. The rising stars that gun for power do shake up the game. They are characters capable of great things, but they will spin you around their finger given the chance. Provide an opening and make them Grand Vizier, and that power will absolutely corrupt. And yes, they will come back for more. The ramifications of this turmoil will echo across your land. Disgruntled peasants will rise up and civil wars will break out, probably when your army is off fighting 100 miles away. But it's not all misery and betrayal. You can build opulent palaces to reward the noble elites and engage in revelry and debauchery, which is a handy way to manage the stress that comes from everyone trying to kill you. Not to mention more historical characters and events. If you like a sprinkle of history in your games, this should perk you up a bit. So many characters and events in Old World are designed around real-world counterparts. There's even links that pop up if you want to learn more. I love this. It feels good to learn as you play. Makes you feel like you're not wasting your time. It's only one step removed from reading a book, right? But then again, if you don't care about it, doesn't matter. Just don't click the links. It's a neat feature that doesn't impact you at all if you don't want it to. All in all, the expansion just adds more of what makes Old World unique, just like the other expansions. Here's the thing with the game, you aren't waiting for a DLC to fill in the gaps and make the game feel complete. It's already there. Every addition after the base game has just been icing on the top. So if it's not already obvious, I really like Old World. I also really like the DLC, because it just adds more. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not blinded by my infatuation with the game. It does have pitfalls and problems. First and foremost, there is a lot of information to take in. It will be overwhelming for new players. There are some great guides to help that onboarding process, but it can be a sensory overload. And doesn't help that the UI and UX can sometimes be counterintuitive, and that tile improvements have a habit of blending together and turning into one big city blob. When I started playing, I remember getting frustrated at how things can quickly go horribly wrong with one bad event, and that will probably be off-putting to a lot of folks. In time though, you just learn to steer into the chaos. I remember my first few hours, and it felt like I was hitting a brick wall over and over. While it did feel familiar, it was very much off in its own stratosphere at times. But then it clicked, and it quickly became one of my absolute favorite strategy games. All the good stuff made sense. The combat, the event system, the diplomacy, the importance of every decision, and the feeling of the world and the impact you have on it. There's so much to like. In fact, so many of the wishlist features I have for the next Civ game are mechanics that are incorporated in some way in Old World. It's the first 4X game in a while that's really went back to the drawing board and came back with something that feels fresh. Not perfect, not without flaws, but something I'm sure will stand the test of time far better than many other titles currently in the space. So, back to my original mission. Trying to convince some of you to take the plunge and try out Old World. I've got to ask, are you swayed? Go on, you can tell me. At least a little bit curious, right? Let me know in the comments if so, or if you've got any questions about the game, hit me up. I will answer to the best of my abilities. Or if there's any Old World veterans in our midst, maybe you can jump into the mix. Help me convince more people to try this game. I will turn the forum over to you lot, but before I go, drop a like, click that subscribe button, and if you really want to go the extra mile, check out the Patreon link in the description box. There's all sorts of stuff on there. But that's all from me for now. I will catch you next time for some more strategy goodness. Thank you for your time.